Today we have Hung Yi giving a talk, Correlation and Corruption on Wall Street. I'm very happy that you could all make it to our second Math Union talk for the undergraduate Math Union. And Hung Yi, take it away.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the chance to talk about this. I've given a few talks before on the intersection of mathematics and society, basically. And so each time I do this in order to think about my own role in the world of mathematics. And so I hope this talk will help you think about your own role as a mathematician or someone who does mathematics in this world. Yeah, so I'm a PhD, I'm a second year. Go check out my website for cool stuff. Yeah, right. So this talk is going to be on a very small part of the 2008 financial crisis. Hey, can you all hear me fine, by the way? I'm talking a little softly because I've kind of lost my voice.
It's all good. We can hear
Okay,
you good.
great. Yeah, so like whole books and documentaries have been written on the 2008 financial crisis. So I'm just going to do a small part of a small mathematical part that I hope you all can appreciate. And I also hope to talk a little bit about the human error that went into this crisis. So I want to go back to this question of that I always have is that is mathematics a force for accountability or a shield against accountability? Now we have authority figures, we have governments and companies that have lots of algorithms that govern many aspects of our lives today, and they do that with mathematics. And is mathematics a way for us to hold them accountable for their decisions, or is mathematics a way for them to protect themselves from accountability? Yeah, please think about these questions as I continue explaining these things. So, what has the financial crisis got to do with me? Right? I mean, it's all about some big banks doing some shady stuff. Oh, nothing that I have something to do with, but oh, you will be wrong because you think that you don't invest money, but actually you do. When all of us put our money somewhere, right? You have to put your money somewhere. So you put your money in savings accounts, retirement funds, or a pension plan. Eventually when you start working, so what you do is you give them your savings, you put it there, and then they give you an interest, right? So they keep the money for you, and then they pay you some percent every year. But how do they give you the interest? Well, the money doesn't just come out of nowhere. What happens is that the savings bank or the retirement fund, they take the money you give them and then they invest it somewhere else, and then they use the proceeds. For example, they could lend they take the money from you and they lend it to corporations, they lend it to governments, they invest in real estate, they buy commodities like gold and oil and so on. And they could lend it to some entities that are somewhere between corporations and government agencies, like the University of Toronto. So they lend your money to these corporations, and then they get the interest from these corporations, from these entities, and they give that interest back to you in the form of your interest on your savings. Now, these savings banks, retirement funds, and so on, they're special in that they're supposed to try to protect your savings, and they're not going to gamble too hard on it. So they try to do some like low risk investments. Unfortunately, that means that they get a very low interest rate, so you get a very low interest rate. Of course, they either want to give you a high interest rate or they want to make lots of profit for themselves. So they would like to have a high reward from their investments. But unfortunately, in the world of investing, if you want high reward, you need to take on high risk. The magic middle ground is, what if we have low risk investments that have a high reward? Wow, magic. We hope we could really have this. That's very hard to find. These banks are always on the lookout for these kinds of investments. But of course, the basic question is, how do you know how risky an investment is? So the thing is that the entire finance industry happens to depend on these special institutions called credit rating agencies. These are financial institutions, and the major ones are called Fitch, Moody's Investor Service, and S&P, formerly known as Standard & Poor's. So you may have seen their names appear on the news articles. Their job, there are huge financial agencies that can look at a company, understand its financial fundamentals, and see how safe they are as investments. So they give ratings, like all the way from like AAA is the safest rating, like triple C is really, really bad. and U of T is rated AA right now, which is pretty good. And so the higher your rating, the safer you are for investments. So your savings bank and retirement fund, they will want to invest in a corporation or a government that is rated AAA, because they will definitely protect your savings. Right. So this is how you gauge how safe a investment is. So now I want to talk about one. This was rather standard work for a long time. The thing is that going up in 2008, the credit rating agencies and banks started trying a new thing on a new kind of financial product. So it's a I'm not going to call it by the technical name. Basically, it is a package deal of home loans. So basically, a lot of Americans borrowed money to buy houses, and then because you borrow money, right, so you got to pay it back. So each homeowner regularly has to pay some amount of money to pay back the bank that gave them the loan. So a bunch of investment banks, Citibank, Lehman Brothers, and so on, they said, okay, we'll take all these loan payments and then we'll package it up into something fancy. So we'll take the stream of payments from the loans, and then we divide it into 3 tiers: the top tier, the middle tier, and the bottom tier. So the top tier people, they take these tiers and they can sell it to people, right? These are like collection rights to the money. So people in the top tier, they get to collect the money first. So first they take all the money, and then after they finish taking all the money, the middle tier takes the remaining money, and then when they finish collecting the money, the bottom tier gets the whatever is remaining. So
this money is coming from the loan payments.
yes,
Of the package. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and thanks. By the way, like please interrupt me if you have a question. So yeah. So what's the problem, right? The problem is what happens if the homeowners stop paying back their loans. For example, a homeowner, they might lose their job, then they have no more income, and then they have to default on their loans, stop paying back. So if some people stop paying back, the top tier people wouldn't mind, because like hey, I get to take my money first. I can take the money from the other homeowners who are still paying. The middle tier will be like, oh, it's fine, I still have enough money. It's the bottom tier people who are going to be hurt first. You know, they will if anyone stops paying money, it's the bottom tier that loses money first. And to compensate for the extra risk, they get to take more money. So the largest pool of money goes to the bottom tier people. So this is a high risk, high reward gamble. And for the middle tier, they have a lot of middle amount of uncertainty, right? I mean, like, oh, they like, well, I'm safer than the bottom tier people, but what if enough homeowners stop paying their loans, and then after the top tier people take all of the cash, like, what am I going to have left? So there's still a little bit of uncertainty left, and for that reason, they also get to take a little bit more money than the top tier. While the top tier people, they're like, we're sitting pretty, we're like very safe, we get to take all the money first. So, you know, like unless like a huge amount of people stop paying their loans, like, we're going to be pretty safe. We can always take the money, and for this security, they get to take back less money. So it's either low risk, low reward, or high risk, high reward, or medium risk, medium reward. And so these companies, they get a credit rating agency like Moody's to give ratings to each of these tiers. Like you can see the top tier is rated AAA because it is supposed to be very safe. And then they sell these tiers to banks worldwide, retirement funds, and hedge funds. And especially the hedge funds really love gambling, high risk, high reward, so they buy the bottom tier. And if anyone has any questions, please interrupt me. So the problem is that the risk turned out to be higher than anticipated and estimated by the credit rating agencies. So it was actually far more likely that people would stop paying their loans. So the ratings were too optimistic. And when people started not paying their loans, especially when housing prices started going down and people stopped being able to refinance their loans, many people stopped being able to pay their loans. And so, of course, the bottom tier got hurt first, right? So the poor hedge funds, oh no, they get burned. And then after that, oh yeah, and in the lots of the banks that were selling these package deals, they bought plenty of it for themselves because they honestly thought it was very good, and so they got hurt too. And then more people stopped being able to pay their loans, and the middle tier and the top tier all got hurt. And that hurt everyone from the like banks worldwide to retirement funds, and like huge number of people in the US lost their pension. It's really, really very tragic, like a lifetime of savings, you know. And this set of a chain reaction that blew holes in the entire financial system of the entire world, and that kicked off the financial crisis. All right. Any questions at this point? Okay, and I'll continue. So the problem was this thing called correlation, right? So I explain what I mean. So in a package deal, you have about 100 home loans in them, and if the home loans, they all were independent of each other, like if one homeowner, whether the homeowner pays his loan or doesn't pay his loan, has nothing at all to do with whether another homeowner pays the loan or not. Then these home loans would all be independent, and the risks would kind of cancel out, right? Because if one guy doesn't pay, well, the other people would, large number would still pay, so nothing too bad. But the problem is they turn out to have a higher correlation, for simplicity's sake, correlation, we just summarize it as one number from 0 to 1. So if correlation is 0, it means that the home loans are completely independent of each other. If correlation is a little higher, it means that, you know, many homeowners would keep paying together, or many homeowners would stop paying together. They behave a little bit more in sync, not completely. If the correlation is equal to 1, means everyone's behavior is exactly the same. So everyone pays together or everyone stops paying together. That's not very realistic, you know, doesn't really happen. And but why is there correlation? Right? There are several things that could cause people to behave similarly. For example, the health of the economy actually affects whether people pay their loans back or not. In a good economy, everyone has a rather steady income, and most people would just keep paying. If the economy is really bad, lots of people might lose their jobs, and that would stop them from paying back their loans together, a lot of people at once. And there was this phenomenon of predatory lending. So basically, banks were pressuring homeowners to take on loans that were a bit too heavy than they could handle. And so the banks would make more money, but then it caused a lot of homeowners to eventually not be able to pay their loans. That was one of the causes that led to the 2008 financial crisis. And there are many, many more causes. So now we have to ask, like, so you have a package deal, right? Like, how did the credit rating agency manage to sell this deal to so many people? Why did they? I mean, they didn't sell it. They rated the package deal as safe so that the banks could sell loads of them. But why did they rate it wrongly? Why did they rate it so optimistically? So how did they do this rating process? It comes in roughly 3 stages. So first of all, you have to estimate the correlation, and basically they looked at historical data of who paid their loans and who didn't pay their loans, and estimate, well, how similar is the behavior of everyone, right? And the second step is to be able to simulate by a computer program one single homeowner. Is this like you generate a random number and use that random number to predict, okay, when is this homeowner exactly going to stop paying their loans? Let's predict the time that they will stop paying. And then you have to combine about 100 of these together and to combine them in a way that lets them be correlated. And to do that, it used to be really hard to do that in the finance industry until in the year 2000, David Lee, a financial analyst, he published this paper that introduced this thing called a Gaussian Copula, which is a method that insurance companies were using to model the correlation of lifespans in a married couple. Like they said, wow, turns out that if your spouse dies, then your lifespan is also shortened by a certain amount. And they were using this mathematical model to figure out how much. And so David introduced this mathematical model to the finance community, and it was very popular because it was very simple, very tractable, very elegant, and it started being used everywhere to produce tons of package deals and rate tons of package deals. So So before we get to that, like we should look at one single homeowner first. Like how long can a single homeowner keep paying? So this is from the historical data. You can build this curve that tells you the probability density that homeowner would stop paying their loans at a certain time t. So uh, so it basically, so you see the zero there. So zero means the start of the loan, right? So it means that I borrow money from the bank. I'm going to buy my home, and then so we start counting from that. Then you see at the beginning the curve is very low. It means that most homeowners will generally keep paying very early on. Yeah, I mean, if you borrow the money, at first few times you probably have no problem paying the loan. But after some long amount of time, you find that many homeowners might stop paying the loan, roughly around the similar time. And then as the time goes on, most people have after a very long time, like most people have already stopped paying. So there aren't many survivors left. So you don't really get any more people who stop paying at that time, because they've mostly all already like stopped paying at that point. Okay. And this is a probability density graph, because what probability is the area under the graph. So if you look at the time t, the area under the graph up to time t is the probability that someone would stop paying by a certain time t. Yeah, so for example, like if t is very small, then there's the area under the graph up to that point is really small. So there's a very small chance that you would stop paying very early, about 0. And if you look at a very, very long time, like almost infinity, like what is the chance that you would stop paying before time infinity? And that is like you're almost certain to stop paying before time infinity. So the area under the curve would be 1 at that point. And if t were maybe somewhere in the middle, and then we look at the area up to the point, it's about 3/5. It means that the chance that you stop paying by that time t is about 60%. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
when you say stop paying, you mean like this is for any reason, right? Like not just like, oh, like I stopped paying because I ran out of money, but also like I stopped paying because my loan is done. Like that also counts. Like I've paid it off.
We don't really have to think about people paying off the loan, because normally, like when you pay off a home loan, like it's measured in like, I don't know, tens of years or something. So that's further than we need to think about. Normally, all the investors care about is within 5 years. Within 5 years, are they going to keep paying or not? So within this 5-year time span, like it's unlikely that people are going to pay off their loans. Does that answer your question?
Okay, sure, thanks.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for asking the question. Any other questions at this point? Okay, then I'm going to move on. So the thing is, this curve actually looks very similar to a Gaussian distribution, right? Like I mean, if you've ever heard of the term Gaussian distribution before, it's just that bell curve that is associated with the distribution of grades. So I'm sure you know what the Gaussian distribution is. You must have thought about it before, like curving the grade and that kind of stuff. So, but there's an important difference between the two. So one of them, the horizontal axis goes from 0 to infinity, and the other goes from like negative infinity to infinity. So while computers are really good at simulating Gaussian distributions because they are very well studied mathematical objects. So, but how are we supposed to simulate a single homeowner, right? Like using this funny curve that comes from historical data. When I say that computers are really good at simulating Gaussian distributions, like let me just do an example in Mathematica. So here I'm going to generate 100 random numbers from negative infinity to infinity according to a Gaussian distribution. So if you look at you all can see this graph that I just created, right, in Mathematica. Can someone?
Yeah, we can see
okay,
it. Looks
excellent.
beautiful.
Thank you. So you see the blue dots at the bottom. These are all the random numbers along the horizontal axis. You can see that they're kind of clustered around the middle. And the orange thing is a histogram of like saying, well, within 0 to 1, how many dots are there? 1 to 2, how many dots? 2 to 3, how many dots? And you can see that this roughly follows the bell curve shape. So but it doesn't really look like that. That's because I haven't plotted enough points. Let's do like 1000 instead. Now that looks a lot more like a bell curve. Yeah. So this is how a computer would simulate a Gaussian distribution. I always think of it as throwing darts. You know, the computer throws darts at the real line, pew 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 pew, and then you see where it hits, and then you see that the cluster of darts near the center and how many darts forms this like bell curve shape. Yeah. So that's how computers are very good at simulating Gaussian distributions. But how do we use the Gaussian distribution to how can we use random numbers like that are distributed like a Gaussian or a bell curve? How do we use that to simulate homeowners? So the answer is that, so like given we can generate a random number x between negative infinity to infinity, and we want to use that to produce a certain time from 0 to infinity, where that time value is supposed to represent that the homeowner stops paying at that time. So I need to create a function that goes from a random number. You input a random number, and then it will give you the time that the homeowner will stop paying. So this function t. So I'm going to, the link between these two is the area under the graph. Both of these, the loan payment graph and the Gaussian distribution graph, they are both probability density curves, which means that the area under them is a probability, and it's a number between 0 to 1. So we'll use that. We'll translate from the number between 0, negative infinity to positive infinity, translate that into a number between 0 and 1, and then translate that into a number from 0 to infinity. Bunch of words. Let's just see in action. What does it mean? So we start with a random number x, right? So I use my computer and I generate a random number x from like negative infinity to positive infinity. Okay, then I look at the area under the Gaussian distribution up to that point, and its area is equal to A. Okay, so then now I look at the corresponding region under the loan payment curve and see up to what point the area is also equal to A. And then the new point is of time. I'm going to call it t of x. So I do it again. So let me generate x. Now it's between -2 and -3. So there's like a very small area up to the point x. Well, it's small number A. And now we also look under the loan payment curve, how much area, up to what point the area under the curve is also equal to A. And I call that point t of x. If your x is very large, then your area up to x is going to be almost all of the area. Because this area A is approximately equal to 1. And so it means that correspondingly in the loan payment curve, you almost have to take all of the area, and your t of x is also very large. Are there any questions about the how this function t is defined? Okay, there aren't questions, then I shall continue. Right. Oh, yeah. That little red icon tells me it's time for Mathematica. All right. So let's see this simulation thing in action. Where's Mathematica? Okay, there you are. Okay. So yeah, I've like just picked a random curve that kind of looks like, you see this curve like it's called a beta distribution. I don't really know what a beta distribution is. All I know is that it kind of looks like the curve that I drew. That's all I did. I just picked a curve that kind of looks like the loan payment curve. And then I look at the function of the area, area or under the normal distribution, which is also another name for the Gaussian distribution. And then I define my function t of x in terms of areas. It's not really important to know what the function, what all the code really means. I'm just defining my function here. And now I'm going to okay, I'm going to generate 500 random numbers according to the Gaussian distribution. And then I'm going to apply my function t to those numbers, and then I'm going to plot both of them, the Gaussian random numbers and also the output of the function t. So remember that the output of the function t is supposed to represent the time that homeowners will stop paying. So I could define this function t in any way. So what's the guarantee that this is actually a good representation of the time, right? So let's just look. I won't prove it. The proof is actually very fun to do, but like I won't prove it. So okay, I think 500 is too much. Let's look at 100 first. Okay, now you look at this pair of graphs, right? On the left, I have a set of plots, and on the right, I have a set of plots. On the left, you see on the left bottom, you see a bunch of blue dots, and they're clustered around the center-ish, sort of. And these are the Gaussian random numbers. On the right, you see that the dots are clustered a lot more to the left. These are the output of the function t, and you can see that the histogram, which sort of supposed to look like the curve, it does look more like the loan payment curve that is like skewed towards the left, and it starts from 0 to infinity. You see on the left histogram, it goes from negative infinity to positive infinity. On the right histogram, it goes from 0 to infinity. So by computation and looking by my eyes, I declare that this simulation is a success of the homeowners, right? Okay, so that is how you can simulate them using this. You simulate homeowners, a single homeowner, using this function t of x. Okay, but now how do you simulate multiple homeowners, especially with correlation? So remember, there's about 100 home loans in a single package deal, and you cannot simulate them independently one by one, right? Because they are all related to each other. Like in a good economy, remember, a lot of people will keep paying for a long time. So it means that t, the time that they stop paying, is generally going to be very large altogether. And if there's a bad economy, t will generally be very small together. It means people stop paying early. And remember that this correlation is calculated from historical data, and it's a number between 0 to 1, describing situations between independence of the homeowners or identical behavior for each homeowner. So we need to generate about 100 random numbers according to the Gaussian distribution with a certain correlation number. Because the certain correlation number is what we saw from the historical data. So we should use a multivariate Gaussian distribution with correlation. So multivariate just means very high dimensional. We just looked at a one-dimensional bell curve. There's like 100-dimensional bell curve. If you can like imagine what it looks like. Well, I'm sure you can't. So let's just look at what a two-dimensional Gaussian distribution is supposed to look like. Right. So okay, yeah. So here I'm going to set correlation to 0, and then I'm going to plot 500 points in the two-dimensional Gaussian. So here you see a bunch of points scattered around the two-dimensional plane. I said it's two-dimensional. And you see that they're more or less clustered around the center in some circular region. So if you plot out like the likelihood of where the points are supposed to be, like then you get this two-dimensional curve that I think you would agree with me that this is a generalization into 2 dimensions of a bell curve. It's like a 2-dimensional bell curve. So you can see that the middle is a bump that rises up. It means that the points would like to cluster around the center. Okay, and then how is this supposed to help us to simulate multiple homeowners? So it's 2-dimensional, so I can simulate 2 homeowners. How am I supposed to do that? So the thing is, because I'm plotting points on a 2-dimensional plane, each point has an x coordinate and a y coordinate. So the x coordinate is going to represent one homeowner. The y coordinate is going to represent another homeowner. So what I'm going to do now is I've written some code that is going to help me to take all of the points and just look at the x coordinate. Take all of the points and just look at the y coordinate. So I'll just do that. Okay, so this thing that I've selected is exactly the same picture from before, the bunch of points clustered there. In the blue line here, in the blue points here that I've selected, these are all of the points projected onto the x-axis, which means I just only take the x-axis and I ignore I only take the x coordinate and I ignore the y coordinate. And you can see they have the familiar clustering near the center behavior. And if I plot out the histogram of of like where the points are, you can see that it looks like the usual Gaussian distribution that we care about. If I look at only the y coordinates, I get this line of points, and again, they cluster near the center. And if I plot their position in the y coordinate, I also get the familiar bell curve, like a Gaussian distribution again. What this means is that if I get a single, from simulating a two-dimensional Gaussian distribution, I can get two random numbers, the x coordinate and the y coordinate, each of which represents one homeowner, and I can use that to simulate two homeowners. Are there any questions about this at this point? I tend to go a little fast, so like you should stop me if you have questions. Okay, if there are no questions. So now the fun thing is that there are many different types of two-dimensional Gaussians. You know, now that there are two homeowners, we can talk about what their correlation is. So now I'm going to change the correlation number. Okay, it's not zero. Now what you saw here is zero correlation. It means that whatever the x coordinate is has nothing at all to do with what the y coordinate is. But we know that homeowners are not correlated. So let's show an extreme example. Correlation of 0.9. Okay. Whoa, now all the points are like distributed. They tend to want to be along this line, right? This line y equals x. What this means is that the x coordinate, when the x coordinate is large, the y coordinate also tends to be large. When the x coordinate is small, the y coordinate also tends to be small. This is what correlation is. And you can see now the two-dimensional Gaussian is like flattened like this, you know, like it looks like a funny shape. It reflects how everything wants to lie on this line x equals y. Right. And then if we do this projection, the x coordinate and y coordinate, wow, like only the two-dimensional picture has changed into something that kind of looks like the Milky Way. It's quite pretty. But if you project everything along the x coordinate, the x coordinates are still distributed in exactly the same as before. If you just look at the y coordinates, they're also distributed in exactly the same way as before. The thing is, each of the x coordinate and the y coordinates, they're just like Gaussian distributions on their own. And just by looking at the x coordinate, you cannot tell what the correlation is. Just by looking at the y coordinates, you also cannot tell what the correlation is. You have to look at both of them together. So the point being that you can, no matter what correlation number we choose, we can still simulate each individual homeowner in the same way using these x coordinates and y coordinates. We've kind of separated the process of figuring out the correlation, separated it away from the process of simulating a single homeowner. This is the fundamental simplifying trick that made this model so tractable and elegant and appealed so much to the finance traders that everyone started using it. Okay, now I'll go back to my presentation. Yes. So this is what the Gaussian copula is. So you start from to summarize, right? So you start from a two-dimensional Gaussian distribution. Now we're just talking about two homeowners, and you can simulate them many times, like 50,000 times or something. Suppose that one of the random points that you generate according to the Gaussian distribution happens to be this red dot, which is going to be very unlikely because you can see all the points really want to be near the center. But suppose that it is somewhere over there. So you can look at the x coordinate and you can look at the area under the Gaussian distribution up to the x coordinate. And then you look at the loan payment graph and you look at another region that has the same area, and then you look at the time corresponding to that, and that's t of x. You look at the y coordinate, you look at the area under the Gaussian distribution up to that y coordinate, and then you look at a corresponding piece or region of the area under the loan payment graph that has the same area, and then you call that t of y. So then now you have t of x and t of y, and this. So now you know that, okay, homeowner X is going to stop paying at this time. Homeowner Y is going to stop paying at this time. And using that information, the credit rating agency will be able to see, oh, so how many people are going to lose money if they bought the top tier or the middle tier or the bottom tier, given that all of these homeowners will stop paying at these particular times. And that will allow them to figure out how safe or how risky the top tier, middle tier, or bottom tier is. So again, we're using a 100-dimensional Gaussian distribution. And so like the credit rating agency simulates it roughly like 50,000 times or something. And if the package deal or the top tier of the package deal only very rarely loses money, then it is declared to be safe by the credit rating agency and it can get a AAA rating. Any questions up to this point? Okay, I'm going to continue. Right. So I mean, what remember again, like why we were talking about this, right? Like remember that we said that like the credit rating agencies have been too optimistic in their ratings, and everyone was more risk than before. There was higher correlation, so it was a lot more possible for a lot of homeowners to stop paying. So lots of homeowners stopped paying their loans, and everyone from the middle tier to the top tier got hurt. Everyone except Goldman Sachs and Moody's and the credit rating agencies. But yes, everyone else got hurt. Poor people like you and me and our higher generation of ours, our parents, our grandparents, some of them lost their savings. Very tragic. So what went wrong? I like to look at like some of the point out some of the mathematical flaws that cause this problem, but also a lot of the human greed and laziness that helped people to abuse the mathematics that was behind this. So there's some mathematical flaws first. So the thing is, the historical data that was the correlation was estimated from was very optimistic. It was during an economic boom. And so very few people stopped paying their loans. And when you have very little data, it makes it very hard to estimate what the correlation is. And people tended to underestimate the correlation from this. People from the optimistic historical data, your analysis would tell you that people's actions of whether they paid or didn't pay their loans were more or less independent from each other, when actually in reality, in the stressed out economy later, they would turn out to be very correlated. And many academics took issue with the assumption that correlation is a single fixed static number, when some people argue that correlation should fluctuate with the health of the economy. When the economy is when the economy is really good, then actually the correlation goes down when the economy is good, because people have more choices they can make with more money, and then like people are not forced to stop paying in a sense. And some academics say that, well, you should include some randomness, for example, by using this thing called Brownian motion, include a factor of that, or randomness in your correlation. So your correlation would jump around like weather patterns. Another issue is that, why did we use Gaussian distributions? I did a small sleight of hand that I just introduced the Gaussian distribution saying, oh, it kind of looks like the Gaussian distribution, so we're just going to use it. Honestly, I tried to figure out why people use Gaussian distributions, and I couldn't figure it out. Like whenever I look at a piece of literature, it says, oh, we use Gaussian distributions because other people have been using Gaussian distributions. It's the industry standard. Don't ask so many questions. The problem is that this multivariate Gaussian distribution, it doesn't model extreme behaviors very well. And extreme behaviors was exactly what happened in the 2008 financial crisis. So some academics have argued that you need to use other multivariate distributions, something called the Clayton Copula, not the Gaussian Copula, to better model the extremes that you find in investing. There's a really wonderful essay that I think you should read. It's called "The Formula That Killed Wall Street." If you see the references below, it's the last one. It's an excellent essay, and it argues that you shouldn't, in fact, try to model interdependent relationships just within a pool of 100 home loans, just based on a single correlation parameter. I mean, how many pairs of homeowners are there? There are like 100 choose 2 pairs of homeowners, and each of them have a certain amount of relationship with each other. Some are even independent from each other. So what makes you think that you could summarize everything in terms of just one correlation parameter? This is one criticism of the model. But I also really want to emphasize the human errors, the human greed and laziness that led to the abuse of the mathematics. First of all, there was a huge conflict of interest. I mean, like the credit rating agencies, they're companies, they need to make money. So how do they make money? There's this fantastic state of affairs where if I'm the bank and I want to sell a package deal, I want everyone to think that my package deal is safe. But everyone listens to the judgment of the credit rating agencies. So I have to convince the credit rating, I have to persuade the credit rating agencies to give a very safe rating. Well, turns out that I'm the one paying the credit rating agencies to give the ratings. So the credit rating agencies, they really wanted to keep their customers, and they knew that if they didn't give a very good AAA rating to the top tier of the package deals, then these big banks would just simply go to their competitors to get a better rating. In fact, like this is a quote from a statement of facts in a settlement, like a multi-million-dollar hundreds of millions of dollars settlement between the USA and Moody's Investor Service, one of the credit rating agencies. So there's this quote there: a Moody's analyst consulted an employee of the banks that were selling the package deals, and he told his supervisor, hey man, I realized that, oh, they're not going to get us to rate any package deals made by them, because if we don't rate them as safe as the S&P, you know, like they will just go to S&P if we don't rate it as safe. The correlations will be a big problem. As the correlations increase, our AAA rating will be even harder to achieve. And so there's actually like other times that I haven't mentioned here where like the executives like deliberately downplayed this correlation issue and tried to they presented to the whole world as if everything's all fine and good. Oh, everything is safe, even though they knew that something wrong was going on. Meanwhile, no, people weren't doing their due diligence either. You know, like all these like your savings bank and your retirement fund, they are looking for low risk, high reward investments, right? Well, you know, the credit rating agencies, oh, hey, these are like a low risk, medium reward, not high reward, they're just low risk, medium reward investments. It doesn't sound very good. Then the small banks are like, oh yeah, credit rating agencies know their shit, right? Like they should really know this thing. Let me just trust them completely, and like let me not have an office to like do my own like a, you know, some of these banks that are really small, they actually don't have money to pay a bunch of like expensive financial analysts to go and analyze these complicated package deals and figure out how risky they are. So some of them really had no choice but to just believe the credit rating agencies. But all in all, everyone just believed what the credit rating agencies said without doing their own due diligence. And there's this fantastic revolving door between regulators, credit rating agencies, and banks, right? So if you're like some financial trader working in a bank or an executive, and then you're like, oh, I think I'm sick of this. I'm going to like go somewhere else. You might go and work at a credit rating agency, which is supposed to be a check on the banks. And then if you leave a credit rating agency, you might work in the financial regulator of the government. There's supposed to be a check on both the credit rating agencies and the banks. So within these three agencies that are supposed to be checking each other, there are many people, former colleagues, of wonderful collegial relationships with each other. And there's a bit of this, you scratch my back, I scratch yours thing going on. It's honestly quite disgusting. But then there's a deeper contradiction here, you know, like you might say, well, the multivariate Gaussian distribution, maybe it doesn't model things very well. Maybe we estimated the correlation and we underestimated it. We should change our estimation. We should make our predictions better. But why would you want to do that when a simple, elegant model makes the company operation so efficient that it helps it make a lot of profits? So why would you want to improve the model when it might mean that you make less profits? So there's a certain disincentive to making the model fit reality. And this is a quote from that wonderful essay, the formula that killed Wall Street. They said the investment banks would regularly phone a Stanford finance professor and ask him, come in and talk to us about what exactly this Gaussian Copula is. And every single time the professor would say, no, do not use this for risk management or for valuing these package deals. But most people didn't listen because everyone was just making too much money at the time. Yeah, and I really want to point at this contradiction, you know, like like even though like simple model gives you efficiency, gives you profits, like I mean, but these things have a real human impact. Like a whole generation of people in the United States and around the world, like so many people like sank into poverty because they lost their savings, and then like they couldn't pay their loans, and then like because they were subject to predatory loaning, they had to pay off a huge amount of debt. It's really tragic consequences. And so like, what is the role of mathematics in the corporate world really? Like if you are a researcher or an analyst and you're working on a piece of mathematics, and then you say, you know, the math model that we're working with, something's wrong with it. We should change it. And if it threatens the profits, how much say do the researchers or analysts have? It is another problem with this is that in many of these big financial institutions, there's a culture of promoting people based on the amount of profits that they bring to the company, like how many deals they help to close. And the problem with this is that as an analyst, you may have discovered some issue with the mathematical model, but you would like sort of try to massage your conscience into not saying anything, because you know if you say something and then it hurts the profits of your team, then your people in your team are going to hate you because they're not going to be promoted. That's not really a good thing to do. Why are we so anxious anyway? I'm earning so much money analyzing this stuff, you know. Like yeah, eventually it lets a lot of mathematics that's used out there. It allows people to hide the bias and manipulation in the assumptions of the mathematical model. It allows people in the corporate world to say, hey, look at us, we really know our stuff. Like we're gonna make a best decision for you based on our fancy pants mathematical model. And hey, it's gonna be absolutely fair. No bias or manipulation or anything because it's mathematics. How could mathematics be skewed? How could mathematics not be fair? Well, turns out we didn't tell you the assumptions. You should always look at the assumptions that they have. But of course, we're never going to tell you the assumptions that we use. Oh dear. So I kind of see this as a shield against accountability. The companies like use mathematics as a shield, as a face saying we know our stuff and you shouldn't question us unless you have a PhD in math or something. Now you're able to figure out all this math yourself. It allows the companies to make certain decisions and do various forms of exploitation and manipulation without having to answer the people directly, without having to make it all public. So how can we fix this? I don't know. People are really working on it, and I personally am not too optimistic about it. But first of all, we should have better math models, develop better ones that actually fit reality better. I think we should have more consequences for individual executives instead of just suing a company and fining them. Like Moody's got fined, I don't know, $800 million or something. But what is that to an individual executive? You know, like I think like individual jail time for individual executives would be more of a deterrent because it's individuals who make the decision. And some countries have like pushed credit rating agencies to separate the analyst and corporate sectors more so that there is less like undue pressure on the people who are doing the research on the finance mathematics. Some people hoped that allowing more credit rating agencies into the big market will increase competition and force ratings to have higher quality, but it actually backfired. The quality of ratings has gone down since the 3 other rating agencies have joined the market because everyone is now even more anxious to keep their big bank customers and to like well, at least this is what people are suspecting. You know, we never know until we launch another huge investigation after another huge financial crisis. Just have to wait for that. So yeah, well, you know, if you are interested in reading more about that, like this is just a very brief overview. I really recommend you read this essay, Formula that Killed Wall Street. It's very accessible. It won an award for like best statistics, like a communication. And you can also read the official report on the financial crisis commissioned by the US Congress. It's pretty long and it goes into a lot of detail, but it's actually surprisingly readable. It's actually very interesting. It tries very hard not to be technical. So it's good to read. You learn about credit rating agencies and more about the package deals that happened. And you can also check out this book, which I found really enlightening. Is this epic storyline about not just the 2008 financial crisis, but the causes and effects that led up, that the rot that happened in the financial system that eventually led to 2008, and then the rot that was still present in the financial system globally after that, and the same causes eventually causing the Eurozone crisis, the Greek debt crisis. You remember that time when Greece was having trouble paying off its loans? All of these things are linked. And you can, I really like this book because it goes into the human drama behind of it all. Like you see, like President Obama, like these are accounts of meetings with Obama. Obama talking to the leaders of big banks, saying like, please guys, please, like don't advertise how you're paying your banks big bonuses during the financial crisis. Like, I'm the only person who's keeping the pitchforks away from you, so please hold yourself back. Like wonderful negotiations like that behind the scenes. But yeah, like I like to come back to this question, like, is mathematics a force of accountability or a shield against accountability? When like you're studying math, like some of you might go into academia from here. Some of you might actually go into finance. Some of you might go into a company that uses data analysis. Everyone's using data analysis these days. So you might see math in action. You might be involved in it. Or you might just not do mathematics after you graduate, but you might still see mathematics being used around you in the company that you're working in. And when you see that, I hope you can ask yourself, is this mathematics being used as a force for accountability, or is it being used as a shield against accountability? And do you want to use math as a force for accountability or as a shield against accountability? Thanks for listening to my talk.